On a quiet, moonless night, deep in the heart of the forest, something ancient stirred. The air was thick with the scent of pine and decay, the only sound the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. No one in the small, forgotten town of Black Hollow ever ventured into the woods after dark. Not anymore. They knew better. There were whispers, passed down from generation to generation, of things that lurked in the shadows, waiting for anyone foolish enough to stray from the path. But it had been so long since anyone had disappeared that the stories had become just that, stories. Legends. Myths meant to scare children into behaving. Alex didn't believe in legends. He was a 20-year-old college dropout, back in his hometown after his life in the city fell apart. He had always been the adventurous type, the one who would laugh in the face of fear. And when his childhood friend, Greg, challenged him to spend a night in the haunted forest, Alex didn't hesitate. It was just the kind of reckless dare that would help him prove to everyone that he was still the fearless Alex they all remembered. Armed with nothing more than a flashlight and a backpack filled with snacks and a few beers, Alex set off on his adventure just as the last traces of daylight slipped behind the trees. The town seemed to disappear behind him almost immediately, swallowed up by the thick, towering forest. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became, until even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Hours passed, and Alex found himself at the heart of the forest. The trees were taller here, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, blocking out what little light the stars offered. He had heard about this place, the clearing where the old cabin used to stand before it burned down, where the ground was said to be cursed. According to the stories, the forest had claimed the cabin's remains long ago, swallowing them into the earth like it did with everything else that dared to linger too long. But Alex didn't care about the stories. He cared about making it through the night and proving everyone wrong. He set down his backpack, cracked open a beer, and leaned back against a moss-covered rock, his flashlight casting a weak glow around him. That's when he heard a soft whisper carried on the breeze, barely audible, like someone calling his name. Alex. He froze, his heart skipping a beat. It was probably just the wind, he told himself. Nothing more. But then he heard it again, clearer this time. Alex. He stood up, the flashlight shaking in his hand. Who's there? He called out, his voice echoing through the silent woods. No answer came, only the sound of something moving through the underbrush, slow and deliberate. Alex's breath quickened as he scanned the darkness with his flashlight. There was nothing. Just trees and shadows. But the whispering didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, as though whatever was calling his name was just out of sight, hiding in the dark. Alex. Come closer. He took a step back, fear gripping his chest. He didn't believe in ghosts, but this didn't feel right. The air was too cold, the shadows too thick, and the whisper there was something wrong with it. Something unnatural. Alex. Please. Help me. The voice was pleading now, desperate. He knew he should run, should get out of the forest as fast as possible, but something in the voice made him hesitate. It didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a person, someone who was lost, someone who needed him. Against his better judgment, Alex took a step forward, then another. The whisper guided him deeper into the trees, away from the clearing, away from safety. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees growing denser, their branches intertwining above his head, blocking out the stars completely. The darkness was suffocating, but the voice kept calling, kept pulling him forward. Alex. Over here. He stumbled through the underbrush, the flashlight flickering as though the batteries were dying. And then he saw a faint glow in the distance, like a lantern hanging from a tree. Relief flooded through him. Maybe it was another hiker, someone who had gotten lost like he had. But as he drew closer, the light flickered and went out, plunging him back into darkness. He stopped, his heart pounding in his chest. The whispering had stopped too, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow worse. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something move, a figure, tall and thin, standing just at the edge of his vision. He whipped the flashlight toward it, but there was nothing there. His breathing was shallow now, panic setting in. He needed to get out of the forest. Now. He turned to head back the way he had come, but the path was gone. The trees had shifted, closing in behind him, trapping him in the heart of the forest. He was lost. Completely and utterly lost. Alex. The voice was back, but this time it was different. It wasn't pleading anymore. It was laughing. He spun around, the flashlight shaking violently in his hand, casting erratic beams of light through the trees. And then he saw something standing just beyond the reach of the light. It was tall and gaunt, its skin pale and stretched tight over its bones, its eyes black pits of nothingness. It grinned at him, a twisted, unnatural smile that sent a cold shiver down his spine. Alex. You shouldn't have come here. He stumbled back, tripping over a root and falling to the ground. The flashlight slipped from his hand and rolled away, its beam fading until it flickered out completely. He was plunged into darkness, the creature's laughter echoing all around him. He scrambled to his feet, blindly groping for the flashlight, but it was gone, swallowed up by the forest just like everything else. The laughter grew louder, closer, until it was right in his ear. Alex. He felt a cold hand on his shoulder and screamed, bolting into the darkness, his only thought to get away, to escape whatever was chasing him. But no matter how fast he ran, the laughter followed, echoing through the trees, mocking him. He didn't know how long he ran, didn't care. His legs burned, his lungs ached, but he couldn't stop. Not until he was out of the forest, not until he was safe. But the forest wouldn't let him go. The trees closed in tighter, the branches clawing at his clothes, his skin, trying to drag him back. And then, suddenly, he broke through the trees and stumbled into the clearing. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, his body trembling with fear. The laughter was gone, replaced by the deafening silence of the night. He lay there for what felt like hours, too afraid to move, too afraid to breathe. Eventually, he forced himself to sit up, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of the creature. But there was nothing. Just the trees and the shadows. He stood on shaky legs, his heart still racing. He needed to get out of the forest before the sun set completely. He couldn't spend another night here. Not after what he had seen. But as he turned to leave, he heard it again, the soft whisper, carried on the wind. Alex. He froze, his blood turning to ice. The voice wasn't coming from the forest anymore. It was coming from behind him. Slowly, he turned around, his eyes widening in horror. Standing at the edge of the clearing, where the cabin had once stood, was a figure. Tall and thin, with pale skin and black eyes. It grinned at him, its twisted smile stretching impossibly wide. Alex. You're mine now. And then it lunged. The forest swallowed his scream.